I've got all these little toys here. Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And my guest is Peter Lehrman from AXIAL.com. And we are going to have a fascinating conversation today about a new platform that if you have a reasonably good sized business that you may want to use when it gets time to sell your business. So instead of me yammering on about something I have absolutely nothing about, I'm going to bring Peter on and we'll get started. Hey, Peter, how are you today?
Hi, Josh. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. So tell me something, Peter. What is your platform and how is it different from all the other crummy platforms out there?
So, so the name of the business is Axial, our platform. If you go to axial.com, you can learn more about the business. But a lot of people tend to paraphrase what we do as match.com for people buying and selling privately held companies. We're a matchmaking platform built on the internet, 100% software based, that connects business owners looking to acquire businesses and grow or looking to sell their businesses with buyers of businesses. Those buyers can be other business owners. They can be private equity buyers. They can be family offices that have an expertise in a particular family-based industry. But we operate this platform. And to get to the heart of the question, when the businesses become bigger and they have multiple millions of dollars of revenue, the public listing sites that have been around for 20 years now, basically since the dawn of the internet, the public business for sale listing sites are a really, really bad place for them to do business for a couple of reasons. The first is everything is public. So everybody, who lists a business on the business for sale website essentially puts out a Craigslist ad. Axial, by contrast, is private by design. It's private by nature. Only the seller decides who gets to see information on their business, and the seller gets to do that when they want and how they want. They have total control over that. So that's a big design difference between just the way that the historical business for sale sites work and operate. The second reason is Axial is free for business owners who are selling businesses. And we charge a transaction fee or a subscription fee. It's your choice if you're a buyer. So our model is different from the business for sale sites, which typically charge the sellers listings fees. We don't charge upfront listings fees. The third thing that we do is it's unlike just like a listing site. We've actually built real intelligence and really smart matching technology into the way that Axial works, so that if you are selling your business or you're raising capital to grow your business, Axial, while you're confidentially sort of summarizing all of those things inside of the Axial platform, Axial is returning to you a ranked list of relevant potential investors or relevant potential buyers for your business. So if you run a software business, there's no reason for anybody who buys manufacturing companies to be aware that your business is for sale. There's no reason for you to waste your time reaching out to them, emailing them, having phone calls with them. Different kinds of buyers focus on buying different kinds of businesses, and different sellers should only be spending their time with buyers that are relevant for them. So we've built this recommendation engine that helps the seller figure out, okay, of all the thousands of different buyers that are all over the world, who are the most relevant, most likely ones that will be interested in my business because of the industry it's in, because of the financial footprint that the business has, because of the end markets that we sell into. So there's all these sort of cool filtering tools and stuff like that that really help a business owner or a business broker or investment banker who's helping a business owner not waste their time talking to thousands and thousands of potential buyers, but just talking with those that represent the most likely subset. So it's those three things. It's the smart matching, it's the fact that it's free to the sell side, and the fact that it's 100% confidential. You as the seller decide who knows that your business is for sale, and you can control that however you please. And that represents a really big difference from the way it used to be.
So it appears to me, maybe I'm wrong about this, that by using your service, you would not be using an investment banker per se.
Yeah, that's a common assumption that people make, but it is incorrect. It's interesting, right? Just because a platform like Axial exists doesn't mean that you as a business owner can just sort of come to axial.com and we have this magic wand that just sells your business for you, without any hard work, without any preparation, without any conversations. It's an involved process, right? So the way that I tend to talk about that, Josh, is um, when you sell your house, very often your real estate broker, most people use a real estate broker to sell their house, right? And those real estate brokers will go on and use Zillow or Trulia or Realtor.com. They'll use a set of tools in order to maximize the chances of successfully selling your house for you, right? They don't do it without tools. They do it with tools. The same thing happens when you are buying and selling businesses. The brokers, the investment bankers, the financial intermediaries, they need tools in order to figure out, okay, I've been retained to sell this business. How do I optimize for the following three things? Certainty of close, speed of close, and price and terms, right? And so they need a lot of data, they need a lot of information, and they need to be able to quickly figure out who's going to be interested in this business. So our platform is useful for CEOs and business owners who want to do it themselves, but over 80% of the transaction activity on Axial has a broker involved in it, because at the end of the day, most business owners decide to hire someone to help them with a transaction like this. It's time intensive. They've usually never done it before. And so very often it might make sense to have somebody in your corner helping you out.
So my favorite way of seeing businesses the size you guys are working with be sold is through what's called a structured auction. And if I hire an investment banker to run an auction for me, can they figure out who should participate through your site?
Yes, that's one of the ways that a banker uses it, right? So a good investment banker brings a number of skills to the table. One of them is putting together credible, verifiable information on your business.
Yeah.
One of them is having a set of relationships that he or she has that they can tap into in order to introduce you to potentially good buyers for your business. But that Rolodex is never comprehensive. It's never exhaustive. There's just no way to know everybody who might buy a $10 or $20 million business. It's just very hard unless you're exclusively focused on just some teeny tiny niche. All you do is sell, dental businesses, in San Antonio, Texas. But most investment bankers have a broader remit than that. And so they use tools and they use data, and Axial is one of the tools that they use. Sometimes they decide that they only want to share the deal with 5 or 10 buyers. Sometimes they decide they want to share the deal in a broader auction. I'm not sure what you mean by structured auction, but we see investment bankers use Axial to reach out to only a handful of buyers and do sort of like a really quiet whisper auction. But we also see investment bankers, share a deal with, 100, 200, potential private equity buyers or corporate buyers. A lot of it depends on what does the business owner want, what's the business owner comfortable with, and what's the style that's worked for that particular banker. There's a bunch of different ways to get a business sold, but usually the more people that you can have at the table, the better off you are.
Yeah, typically the best investment bankers I know in the world, they'll start off with a universe of, say 5,000, and they'll let 100 people show interest, get some information, and they bring that down to 4 or 5, and they run the auction with 4 or 5
right
buyers. They don't, so often it's actually between 3 and 5 buyers. They just, they essentially want to get 3 or 5 good buyers to the table and then run an auction after that.
Agree with that. The typical process, right, is, you put together a 1 or 2 page summary of the business, and that's enough to sort of whet the appetite of the buyer, or for the buyer to be able to say, this is a pass for me. I'm not interested in this. But it's kind of like a relatively easy way. It's like a listing for a house, right? You see some
Sure.
pictures, you see a summary, you see the acreage. Typically after that, there's a much bigger, package of materials on the business, but you can't access those materials until you've signed a non-disclosure agreement, which is designed to sort of secure and make it confidential, really all of the information and all of the interactions from that point onward. And so what we've done on Axial is embed that NDA into Axial, embed the one-pager or the two-pager into Axial, so buyers can look at the one-pager and the two-pager very quickly. They can say yes, they can say no, they can sign the NDA digitally, and it just accelerates the process for the seller a lot. The investment banker is doing far less paperwork and is doing far more, relationship management and human interaction. We sort of removed a lot of the admin from figuring out who are those 3 to 5 that you want at the end of the day.
So I'm going to bet that you could be the banker's best friend, and they should be bringing you all sorts of sellers.
We are definitely considered by many to sort of be one of the sort of bankers' secret weapons. So sort of, we're not a particularly well-known business. We don't have a consumer-facing sort of, brand. We've built the business to date largely by partnering with investment bankers, and it's worked. A lot of them like to work with us. There are some that say, I'm only going to work with you on certain deals, and I'm not going to work with you on other deals. For a variety of reasons, they say that. But yeah, in general, we are making it easier for them to assemble a highly qualified list of potential buyers for a business, which makes them do their job more easily, allows them to serve their clients more effectively, and deliver a good outcome to the business owner. There are bankers in the world, plenty of bankers in the world who think that we're kind of like outsourcing their job, or we're getting rid of the need for investment bankers. I've always found that to be, I understand it obviously in theory, but it really doesn't make sense to me. I've bought and sold businesses myself, and it's a very involved process. There's a lot of information that needs to be reviewed. There's a lot of conversations that need to be had. There's a lot of moments of crisis. There's a lot of, there's just a lot of interpersonal work that needs to be done. And there's a lot of storytelling that needs to be done. There's a lot of work that goes into it that not Axial nor any other piece of software can even remotely accomplish.
I'm totally in agreement with that.
Yeah.
My experience, I had a food service and vending company, which would have been fit into your world of businesses to be sold. And when I sold it, I hired a banker for one reason. So I wouldn't have to talk to the seller myself.
Right.
I did the book. I did the analysis. I found the buyer. I did all the work that an investment banker would normally do, but I still paid the banker his fee because I knew that if I was talking to the buyer, I would say something that would cost me $200,000.
Yeah, there's all kinds of value like that, right? So they've done it before. You can do more good cop, bad cop negotiation if there's 2 of you at the table. It's easier to preserve the anonymity of your business being for sale if you have a third party like a banker who's representing you, in a private, confidential way, and using a tool like Axial or not. If you are out in the market talking with buyers and you're the business owner, then presumably they know that your business is for sale. Whereas if you use a third party, you can create a little bit of obfuscation and anonymity. And I have to say, one of the things that people don't seem to realize, because I've had this conversation a million times, it turns out that CEOs actually have a day job above and beyond just getting their business sold, right? And so if you're trying to sell your company as you run your business, the odds are you're just going to do a really lousy job of both, because it's just, they're both full-time jobs. One is long-term, being a CEO. The other is, it's a sprint, right? It's like a 6-month sprint to get something sold, maybe 12 months. It's really hard to do them both well at the same time. And one of the things that I've seen happen when people do that is the business performance deteriorates during that same period in time when they're actually out trying to sell the business. So you approach a series of buyers. You're doing the process yourself as the CEO. Your time is very heavily being sort of siphoned off towards managing the dialogue, pulling information, interacting, negotiating, drafting documents. You've got no help, no leverage, in the process, no banker, maybe you have a CFO. That's can be super helpful. And meanwhile, businesses, it's just not as well managed, right? The business is not as well managed. It's not as tightly managed. You're probably not meeting with your direct reports as frequently. You're mentally in a different place. You're more preoccupied. You're distracted. And so what can happen is, your business results can deteriorate, they can deteriorate over a 3-month period or over a 6-month period. And then, you told the buyer, I do $10 million in sales and I do, $1.5 million in pre-tax profit. And, 6 months later, you're missing your numbers, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of that is just because you kind of had your eye on two balls. So there's a whole host of reasons why a CEO needs to think very carefully about who they hire and whether they hire someone or whether they try and do it themselves. You can do it yourself, but yeah,
Well, there's the old saw about lawyers representing themselves. If the lawyer that represents himself is a fool, well, the business owner that represents himself in a sale process is even a bigger fool. And the reason very simply is I always assume that buyers know what they're doing, and I always assume that sellers have no idea what they're doing, which is usually pretty true, especially if you're selling to private equity or a large corporation that has an M&A department.
Yeah.
And they've bought dozens, if not hundreds of companies, and you've only sold your company once.
Okay.
And you have no idea what you're in for unless you have somebody sitting by your side who does and can coach you through it.
That's right.
So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about selling your business and you think you're going to sell it by yourself because you want to save that, 4%, 5%, 3%, whatever the fee is that you're paying for your investment banker, you're an absolute fool to try to do it by yourself. And by the way, I don't sell businesses. I do advise people through the process, but we don't actually do the M&A work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying this from my own experience of working with other businesses and myself. So Peter, I have another question. I want to just do a little pivot here and have another question for you. If you're selling your business, what is the most important thing you can do, or the couple most important things you can do to have your business be attractive and saleable?
Well, let's see. It really depends on sort of how much lead time you have. If you're going to try and sell it in the next, 6 to 12 months, you have a more limited list of things that you can do to make your business more valuable, right? I'll go through a few. But the more time that you have, the more you can do, right? If you go, it's like if you're going to buy a house and flip it, well, the more time you have to renovate the kitchen and update the bathrooms and stuff like that, the more you can maybe sell it for. So it's sort of the same thing with your business, right? If you're trying to sell your business in the next 3 to 6 months, it's going to be hard for you to get it audited. It's going to be hard for you to have a more diverse customer base, right? It's going to be hard for you to have developed maybe a set of processes that remove you from being mission critical as the CEO from every aspect of the business's operation. So the more time you have, sort of the more things you can do to sort of get your business to an ever higher, higher and drier ground, right? And in a position of strength and leverage to approach a market of buyers. So that's an important concept for people to have. The more earlier you get started, the more you can do. If you're thinking nearish term, I would say, nearish term being like in the next 12 months, I would say minimum thing that you just have to be ready to do is you have to be able to furnish reliable financial statements on your business. You cannot get through a transaction process without having some credible set of reliable financials that demonstrate that what you say is the revenue of your business, what you say is the profit of your business, what you say are the costs of your materials, or the costs of your labor supply, or whatever the case may be, that those are true, right? Now, if you got a long period of time, you can get annual audits, right? And you can, you don't have to work with KPMG or Price Waterhouse. Just getting a good audit from a good regional firm is going to be helpful. It doesn't mean that the buyer is going to just take the audit at face value and say everything here is whistle clean, but it helps, right? It confers a certain amount of trust into the information, and it shows that you as a business owner, take financial reporting seriously because you're spending money and time on it. Second thing that you can do if you don't have time for that is you can consider doing what's called a sell-side quality of earnings. So a quality of earnings report is something that's done very specifically prior to a transaction closing. And what happens is a third-party firm comes in and scrubs the financials to determine whether or not your financials and the quality of your cash flows are as you say they are, and to render a point of view on the nature and the quality of your business's profits and cash flows. Very often what happens with small businesses is the buyers who get pretty far along in the process will say, looks good, I'm trusting you that the financials that you say you have been producing are in fact true. If we decide to do this deal, I'm going to ask for 60 or 90 days where I can hire a quality of earnings firm to come in and verify and confirm a lot of what you have been representing. Most of the time, the seller has not done a quality of earnings report themselves. But one of the things that really, really changes that piece of the process is if the seller has actually gone out and hired someone to do a quality of earnings report. So when the buyer says, I want to do a quality of earnings report, the seller can say, I just did that. I actually did that in the last 6 months, and here's the report. Feel free to take a look at it. Now, again, the buyer isn't necessarily going to take that and say, oh, okay, great. I'll take it all at face value. But it's just a huge, it accelerates the process so tremendously because the trust in your financial, the earnings potential of the business is so fundamental to what the buyer is thinking about when they buy the business.
So Peter, where would you get one of those done?
There's a whole industry, of regional, local, and national quality of earnings organizations that they can be a business line inside of a CPA firm, like inside certain CPA firms of certain scale, they will execute a quality of earnings study as one of the products that they offer, to either a business owner or to a buyer. There are pure play organizations that are in the business of only doing quality of earnings reports. And so, it's not, and it's not something that, only Apple and Google can afford to do. It doesn't cost $100, it costs thousands of dollars, but I'm telling you, the number of transactions that fall apart and break down because the seller cannot quickly verify or create trust around the quality of their financials. It's a huge stopping point. So I think within the world of financial accuracy, you have to be investing prior to selling your business. I'd say the other thing, I could go on for the rest of the day, but I'd say the other thing that really, really matters if you're thinking sooner rather than later about doing this is you have to have a credible plan for how you're going to get multiple qualified buyers to the table at the same time.
And that's where a banker comes in.
Absolutely, right? One way or another, you have to have a plan where when you work backwards from the end, right? At the end of the process, you have at least 2 buyers competing to try and win your business and win the opportunity. That doesn't mean that they will overpay. That doesn't mean that they're going to value your company the way Facebook valued Instagram. It keeps them honest. It keeps them honest, and it puts you in a position where you have an appropriate amount of leverage. It's common sense, but again, you have to have a plan for how you're going to do that. investment bankers are in the business of helping create a competitive dynamic. They use data, they use tools, they use platforms like Axial. So one way or another, you've got to have a plan for how to do that. That either means you're going to do it and you know how to do it and you understand the risks, or you've got a banker or a broker lined up who you think can do good work on your behalf. But
Cool.
you have to have that. You have to have that box checked.
Hey, Peter, unfortunately, we are out of time. And before we go, your information has been just really, really good. I want to have you back sometime. I want to talk about the 3 to 5 year period before you sell your business, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that have to be put in there also. And by the way, one of the ways that you can set up another buyer at the table if you don't have one is to start going down the road of doing an ESOP. I've done that a couple of times where we made the ESOP the alternate buyer to get to the real buyer we wanted to sell to get his price where we had it, need to have it.
It's a good stalking horse at a minimum.
Yes. So, Peter, how do people find you?
Well, it looks like on the screen you've got the email address or the web address. So at axial.com, AXIAL.com, you can go there. You can sign up for free on Axial. You can subscribe to a bunch of newsletters and ebooks on a lot of the topics that we signed up for today. If you're thinking about actually transacting, there's members of the team that are available to have a confidential conversation with you. But it all kind of starts at axial.com. If for some reason you prefer to just reach out to me personally, that's fine too. You can reach me at my email address. It's just my first name, Peter, at axial.net. That's AXIAL.net, not axial.com. Hopefully next year it'll be axial.com. But Peter at axial.net if you want to reach out to me directly.
Great. And I have 2 things I would like you to do. First, if you're listening to this podcast someplace, I hope you go to wherever you're listening to the podcast and please, please, please give us an honest rating and review. And if you don't have a place you listen to the podcast, go to our website at www.sustainablebusiness.co. That's .co and not .com. And the second thing is we've been talking about what it takes to get your business sold. And I've been focusing a lot on what I call creating a sale-ready company. Now, a sale-ready company doesn't mean you're going to sell your company. It means that somebody else wants to buy it and it's sale-ready. And I've written an ebook on what it takes to get a sale-ready company. There are 8 steps along the way. It's really easy to get. You just go to www.sustainablebusiness.co/sale-ready. That's www.sustainablebusiness.co/sale-ready. And this is Josh Patrick. We're with Peter Lehrman. You're at Cracking the Cashflow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here